Childhood tormentors are to adults the equivalent of that ugly scar or blemish that we carry with us through life, not always in the forefront of our thoughts, but there, hanging on, mercilessly nevertheless. The sting of those thoughts of yesteryear is carried around in our hearts, intruding, uninvited, if only momentarily, and seem to serve only to remind us as adults of how vulnerable we still can be. Unlike others who were victimized by bullies throughout their young lives, I was one of the lucky ones. My hell was only experienced in 2 grades, 6th and 7th. My days during those brief years, which seemed to last forever, became a matter of survival. With me, anxiety-ridden and fearful most every moment that a teacher was not present. Even then, the damage was done when the teacher did not see, or simply did not care. My tormentors were nothing more than mean girls, for which my innocence had no defense. Their names were Debbie, Patsy, and Sandra, such simple names for such complex wounds that they created around the perimeters of my heart. And so, through the progressive advances of technology, I sought and I found the perpetrators of my pain on nowhere else but Facebook. There were the faces of those cruel girls who had shaken my psyche and haunted my soul. There they were, and I, unsure what I would do with this information. In the 6th grade in Arizona, it was the hate note, authored by one of my best friends, Debbie. Everyone adored the pretty little blonde-haired girl. Or did they? Did they secretly fear her ability to turn on a dime and make them wish they were dead? Make me wish I was dead? I know during some of my worst weeks, I considered the easy way out, for I quickly became one of Debbie's victims, and for a 12-year-old that doesn't have the option of skipping school, death seems like the only relief. I don't speak this truth lightly. The thought had crossed my mind. Yes, a mere 12-year-old, considering the only option that seemed available outside of suffering the wrath of Debbie's bullying. But instead, I hung my head down, while she had notes passed across rows of desks, from girl to girl, giggling with each passing. Notes that said she couldn't be my friend anymore because I dressed like a square. Notes that called me a lessie because my family and I had just moved from Mexico, where young girls did what I thought young girls were supposed to do. We wore pink dresses with ponytails, we skipped down the street, and we held hands. And so it was a dire mistake on my part to think for a moment that these hip-hugging, bell-bottom, foul-mouthed girls would ever want to hold hands and skip. And so the girls, past Debbie's cruel notes, whispered behind my back, mocked me, and laughed at me, girls of who I knew were my friends, but had to go along with Debbie's plan to punish me for whatever reason, because if you weren't Debbie's friend and ally, then you were Debbie's victim. No one wanted to be me, and so they partook in a cruel and hateful series of events. And even then, I didn't know what was more humiliating, the notes, or my mother finding them in my pant pockets while doing laundry and realizing her 12-year-old daughter was a loser. I was deeply ashamed. But the Debbie saga only seemed to skyrocket on the day that each friend looked away painfully as I tried to make conversation. I knew something was going down that day, but I didn't know what until the dreaded hate note that became a part of my emotional fragility forever on. Debbie had written a note for all the 6th grade girls to check and sign. The note was more of a chart with 3 columns. It simply said, "Tell me what you think of Renee," with a column for hate, a column for dislike, and a 3rd column for like. Each girl was to sign their name next to their check mark. Debbie started the note with a big black check in the hate column, with her name signed boldly next to it. Not one 6th grade girl stood a chance of ever avoiding Debbie's wrath if they dare signed like next to their name. And so, friend after friend, girls that I had laughed with, spent nights with, and sang and danced with, were left with no other option than to hate me. Only few found the courage to check dislike, and I know to this day that through that courage they trembled. The note saga came to a quick head when Mrs. Evans, our old and evil sixth-grade teacher, found it being passed. She was angry, and Debbie was in trouble. Now Debbie became the victim of the note she had perpetrated. I was the only one with the power to save Debbie. Oh, but the taste of karma is not always so sweet. You see, Mrs. Evans chose, after recess, to hold the note up for all to see, boys included. I sank low into my seat. She slammed the ruler on her desk and said, "Hate! Hate is a horrible word." At that, Mrs. Evans used the same shame that I had endured throughout the day to teach a lesson on the word hate. I sunk lower. She asked for other words that people could use instead of hate, and one by one, as she wrote the words in big bold letters on the chalkboard for all to see, dislike, disdain, abhor, I sunk lower and lower. The next day at recess I did the unspeakable. I told Debbie that I was sorry. Oh, it wasn't that I really was sorry. I really deep gut hated Debbie. But I hated more than anything her torment. And if I wasn't being tormented by her, there was only one other option. And so I succumbed to the lowest level of helplessness imaginable when the abuse becomes too much, the equivalent of begging for mercy while kissing your abuser's feet. I asked Debbie to be my friend. I had lost all self-respect. Shortly thereafter we moved, not from the heat of the flames, but right into the fire pit. In this small town in Southern California where ignorance and violence was seen as badass, and a half-white, half-Mexican girl with light skin was nothing more than another ass to kick, I ran. I ran from the bus to my classes, from one class to the other class, and from my last class to the bus, hoping to avoid not just mean girls, but girls that could potentially bash my head in and not give it a second thought. Now my emotional psyche was not the only thing in danger, but I was in physical danger. I cried nightly. I cried in the mornings. I dreaded going to the bus stop where Patsy would regularly tell me to take the first punch, and a circle of kids would surround us, instigating the fight. My father raised a puss for a daughter, which was only confirmed when he asked me what I did in response, and I said, "I told Patsy I don't know how to fight." In the 6th grade, I thought my mother was ashamed, and now in the 7th grade, I had deeply disappointed my father, the man who wouldn't let a saint look at him cross without throwing him over a table. And here I was admitting to my very own bully that I didn't know how to fight. Shortly after that, Sandra, another ignorant gang member, stole my purse, which I was told I could find in the girls' bathroom. There was my leather purse that I had carried proudly, which my grandmother had bought for me, in a toilet full of urine. It was only when my father had had enough that he enrolled me in the karate class. I was not to tell a soul for fear that my newfound, unpolished skills would be tested. 6 nights a week I took classes. Men's classes, women's classes, children's classes, sparring, and with each class I cringed at the thought of having to learn to fight. "Look, hot dog," said Mr. Callahan, the owner of the studio, with his long black curly hair hanging over his shoulders and silver hoop earrings shimmering. "You just need to learn to fight back if someone wants to hurt you." "But I can't," I stated. "I'm shorter than everyone." With that he said, "And so you have an advantage. You have 2 hands, they have 2 hands. You have 2 feet, they have 2 feet. Only you, hot dog, are closer to their groin." With that, Mr. Callahan empowered me, and it was only days later that someone shoved me hard from behind my shoulders when the school bus came to a stop. This time it wasn't Patsy. It was a boy, Jay. Patsy had commanded one of her many followers to shove me, and as I flew forward from the thrust of the shove, I came back even harder with a back fist to the middle of Jay's nose. The fight was on. As Mr. Callahan had taught me, I fought back. And without a second thought, I punched Jay so many times in the face and head that I saw nothing more than the look of shock in his eyes and everyone else's. The next day, Jay was in school all right. I had not one bruise, but Jay, well, he looked like someone took a bat to his face. I was no longer the white girl that couldn't fight. I was El Champion from there on out, which only lasted a few weeks because my parents got me the hell out of that little town in California and moved our family back to Alaska, our home. And so it was that I found a wonderful life during the remainder of my formative years. The girls in my new 8th grade class took me in like a long-lost sister, many of to whom I am forever grateful. I enjoyed varsity cheerleading, boyfriends, dances, and an abundance of wonderful friends. But somewhere deep in my soul, those hints of self-doubt and fear would torment me in my fragile moments, and that is why, at almost 50 years of age, I searched online for the bullies of my youth, hoping to find closure. In all honesty, I didn't find the closure that I had been looking for. In fact, when I opened Pandora's box, I found even more pain. I had been hoping for an apology of some sort, an "oh my God, I can't believe I was so cruel," an explanation that showed any hint of regret. But what I found was quite different. From the girl that threw my favorite purse in the urine-filled toilet, I simply got a, "Are you sure it was me? Because I don't remember you." How could she possibly not remember me? After all that, this was more than a slap in the face. This was someone who shredded a time of my life that was supposed to be good and innocent and happy, and ripped it apart. And now she doesn't remember me? I was mortified that one of my 7th grade tormentors now had more power over me at 50 than she ever did when I was young. And so, with frustration, I proceeded to my next tormentor, Debbie. Hate, note, Debbie. I decided to keep it simple, sweet and simple, to see if I would receive any response or flicker of memory that I existed, and so I typed, "Hi, we were in the 6th grade together, in Mrs. Evans' class. I was the girl from Alaska that had moved to your neighborhood from Mexico. How have you been?" I wanted to gently open an uncomfortable topic on a positive note. No reply. I waited and waited. Still no reply. And then, more than a week later, against my better judgment, and with all the 6th grade angst and pain and rage I carried, I wrote again. It was by far the cruelest note I have ever written anyone. "Dear Debbie, thank you. Thank you for bullying me in the 6th grade. Thank you for writing a hate note for all the 6th grade girls to sign who were too fearful of you not to. I learned so much from you, Debbie. Because of how I suffered the year I knew you, I learned compassion for others and the meaning of what friendship is and is not. You, in the 6th grade, gave me a better education about life and the fragility of the human spirit than any teacher or classroom could have offered. Because of your cruelty and hatred, I am a better person, for I learned the importance of kindness to others." From the 6th grade girl that I was then, who learned a difficult reality, to the woman that I am now, I learned, in part because of you, the powers and the greatness of my own heart. Thank you. It was then that I learned that the closure I got was not the closure I had expected, but far greater than what I could have imagined. My grade school bullies, my tormentors, were nothing more than cowards. Cowards then, and cowards now, almost 40 years later. As for me, I learned the value of self-respect, of being the best person I can be, regardless of those who are unkind, of treating the human spirit with the respect and dignity it deserves under all circumstances, and of knowing that a simple apology can define the adult that we are now. From the worst experiences, I found buried deep some of the greatest treasures.